Are you mad at me?
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story. A client called me the other day, and the first question that he asked me was, "Are you mad at me?" And I answered in true parent fashion by telling him the truth, which was, "I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed." And
Okay, so is there, I'm assuming there's a story behind your story, because
Yes.
I feel like I'm missing out on some key components here.
But all of that was true. And here's the underlying story. I had been working with this client for, probably 2 years in this heavily litigated case worth several $1 million, more than that. And when he came to me after having worked with another lawyer, he just felt he was really being taken advantage of. It was by a business partner, and he was. And we embarked on this, what he knew was going to be a long and arduous litigation. And throughout that course, we were actually doing really, really well. And we were poised at this point, which was just this past week. We got to a point where we were, I guess you would say, we're really ahead on points. We had much better leverage. From a legal perspective, we were in much better shape than the other side. It started out as being kind of 50-50, but it was undeniable at that point that we had by far the upper hand. And the other side came to him and said, "Look, can we have a conversation and see if we can settle this without the lawyers?" And I always encourage that. I think that open line of communication is great. So they did. They had this discussion, and my client came back to me and told me that they had reached a settlement. Now, the settlement that they had reached was much better for my client than the position that he was in a couple years ago when we started, even taking into account legal fees, et cetera. But it was much less than our legal position would justify right here at the moment.
Okay, meaning what you think you could have gotten.
What we could have gotten, what we were in a position to get. The only problem was that it was one of the only cases where I kept having to apologize to my client for winning, because I would say, yeah, we won this hearing, but it doesn't end the matter. In fact, we just had a really big win not 3 weeks ago, but still, from a realistic point of view, looking at it, the litigation would probably go on for another 8-9 months. So that win didn't mean it was his win. My client's win is a filled out deposit slip.
Right.
And that's a lot different from a legal win where a judge just tells you something, So he was looking at another 8-9 months, maybe a year more of litigation, and he was tired.
Right.
Not just from the legal fee point of view, because we could have worked with that, but he was tired. The mental energy, the emotional energy. And so he settled with the other side because he was tired and because it was enough.
Well, that was my question. Was he satisfied with what he got?
Yes.
Okay, so he's happy.
He's happy.
And I'm assuming if you were happy, this wouldn't be a story.
Right. So he's satisfied with it. He knows he could have gotten a lot more, but this is what he needs. And he asked if I was angry because he knew that I felt we were in a position to nail the other side to the wall. We had gotten the upper hand. We could have gotten so much more out of him. I thought the other side, by talking to him at this point, had gotten away with paying a lot less than they otherwise would have. And so the litigator in me was really disappointed that we couldn't go all the way to the end. So,
by the way, this is the first time I've ever seen this side of me, because the lawyer I know you to be, I have come to you a few times with an axe to grind, and I'm like, so Elliot, can we like where actually what I want, like if I was ordering off the lawyer menu, I want to nail someone to a wall, and you will not, and at least my experience of you, and when I've referred other people to you, you will not engage at the I want to nail someone to a wall. Like you intentionally turn those people and those things away. And you've always talked me off a ledge. But what I'm hearing here is like, once you're in the process, it's hard not to slide into that, like, and here's an opportunity. Like,
well, we've gone down, we were in this for 2 years. I thought the other side was acting unethically. I thought that they were taking advantage. So I got personally offended by what they were trying to do. I got so involved. So I wanted to nail them to a wall. And so they were backing up. And at this point, I was disappointed, hence my response, that we didn't get every single dime from the other side. We didn't just nail them to the wall.
Right.
But his point was, and this is what I encourage all of my clients to think about, what is your win? Your win is not necessarily the magnitude by which the other side suffers. Your win is measured by how well you fulfill your own needs. And what he was saying is, this fulfills my needs. But he knew that it wasn't the outcome I wanted. And frankly, the outcome I wanted as the lawyer is irrelevant anyway.
Well, it is, but it doesn't change the fact that you had it and he could feel it.
Yes.
And I have to assume that's hard to not, because you said the key thing. I think when you start to, I don't mean take it personally, like you were personally, like you felt like it was about you, but I mean, you had developed a personal interest in getting this to a certain point. And I think that is when the trap of like winning versus whatever the other version would be called. Like, I don't know what the other side of winning is.
Well, I think it's just defining.
Satisfying, like.
I think it's defining a win.
Right.
And he was defining the win correctly as.
And the way you normally do. I'm so fascinated by this story because I've.
So he was defining the win as did it fulfill his needs?
Yeah.
And yet, in a vacuum, I would define the win as a complete obliteration of the other side. Now, when we talked about it, after that, are you angry? No, I'm just disappointed. The rest of the conversation was I was fully supportive of where he was going. I was saying, look, if this supports your needs,
right,
then you're measuring it exactly the way you should. I'm personally disappointed because ...
So the Bruce Banner side of you was very satisfied with this. Your inner Hulk lawyer.
Correct.
To bust some things into pieces.
Yes, the gamma radiation infused part of me.
So I make this joke, but a year or two ago, and I will not tell the story, but you can probably infer the story. But a year or two ago, I got swept into a client situation far more involved than I normally do, and I encountered my like Hulk side, because I'm not somebody who I don't think I've ever even inside my brain, you use the words like stick it to him, like I'm really gonna get him. Like it's just not. I don't even want that feeling in my brain. It's just not who I want to be. But I found myself, I got so personally invested in like the wrong kind of winning, that it can certainly be a kind of toxic thing. But I also think it's a very natural thing when something starts to feel personal. I mean, what I know about you is there was probably an amount of where you felt like your client was being treated unfairly. And so like you're sort of coming to their defense, then you really want to like stick it to this other thing, but it comes at a cost, right? And I don't just mean a literal cost, but it's more than that.
Yeah, it is. And I think that we had talked on an earlier episode about mindfulness in business. And I think that was really a good part of it for me, because I needed to, in properly advising my client and really looking at it from the right perspective, I needed to analyze whether I thought we should keep going with this litigation because it was good for my client and would accomplish his ultimate goals, or whether I was just feeding some other need.
Yeah, like that awareness of what need you're feeding is, I think, a really fascinating one. I don't know. This feels somewhat unrelated, but it's popped into my head like 3 times while you're talking. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I remember one time I was probably in like high school, and my mom was telling this story about a kid at our church who was probably like super, super, super ADD. Who knows? Like, but this kid was very, always getting in trouble, always doing the wrong thing, whatever. And someone had said, no, don't do that for whatever it was, whatever the situation was. This person was fighting against whatever it was that had come up because they said that kid wants that to happen. That kid's just trying to get attention. He's just trying to get our attention. Mm-hmm. And my mom was so upset because like on the one hand, she agreed that the way the kid was asking for the attention was maladaptive. Like it wasn't a way to get the attention, but she was so upset because she was like, if you recognize that someone needs attention and they're making a bid for attention, to intentionally be like, so I'm not giving it to you is such a, like really stepping back from that a second to say, what is the choice I am making in this situation? It's not exactly the same thing, but it does sort of feel like this. What is your intent? Like, what are you actually the come from? As I have another friend who says, like, what is your come from in this? And is it what you want it to be?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that's exactly the point. And I had a conversation this morning with the client about negotiation of this executive employment agreement. And my client was really irritated because the other side had asked for the moon in this revision. And it was completely impractical. And he said he knew he was just trying to get a rise out of us, and he's just irritated. And he was attaching all of these negative adjectives to the other side's mindset and what they're trying to do, just kind of like the business equivalent of he's just trying to get attention.
Right.
He's just trying to make a point and all that. And what I asked him, I said, okay, but it seems to me that there's an underlying fear. What's he really afraid of?
Yeah.
The reason he reacted to this term by taking your 2 and going to a 44 is something. Was it just, I hate you, or I'm going to make this miserable, or how dare you, which could be emotional?
Sure.
Or was he making a point that this is important to me, and if it's a 2, I'm really afraid of X, Y, Z? And so my client said, well, what he's really afraid of is this. What he really wants is security. But this is a ridiculous way to say it. I mean, we're not going to, no company can give this. I said, okay. But what does security realistically mean?
Right. And what would it cost to provide that, to avoid this entire conversation? And you see that it's like saying like, he just wants a hamburger. So like, but you have a hamburger sitting right there. Do you really want to keep fighting over this thing?
Yeah. And so I said, you're having a conversation with him later this afternoon. Have you ever to this point said to him, I know you're worried about security? And my guy said, no. I said, so here's what you do. For any advice, forget the legal stuff and the legal terms. Take the agreement physically, the agreement you're meeting to talk about, take it physically and move it to the side. So it's not in your line of sight. Yeah. And then say, my read of this is that you're worried about security. Say that one statement and then shut up.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Now, I wish I could add on to that. So what happened is they all live happily ever after. I don't know because I'm waiting to hear. But that was my best.
Whatever it is, even if it doesn't go someplace great, I guarantee you it's better than if he went in with the huge list of like, with the armor and the ammunition of all the ways you're going to shoot. Because, okay, so here's the thing. I'm a person who's worried about security, and you want to come in and do battle with me. Like that is that you're never going to get the best. Like all that's going to do is make me armor up even more because you are even more threatening and more not safe to the thing that I am afraid of, right? Like you are actually making me more afraid about my security because you're not, what would feel like you're not listening.
Right. I'm worried about my personal safety, and so the best response from you is to act threatening.
Right.
doesn't seem to make sense.
Seems like a great idea.
I'm worried that you're going to act out arbitrarily, and then you just blow up on that. That's
right. There was this parenting book or actually it was a talk that I went to one time, and the guy was, I mean, I'm sure we've talked about this before on the show, but he was talking about how 99% of, and I'm making air quotes, like bad childhood behavior is just simply trying to get a need met. And there's some underlying unmet need. And they're going about it in a really terrible way. Throwing a fit doesn't, usually get what people want, but that's the extent of what they have to work with in the moment to communicate this unmet need. And that if you can step back and say, are they tired? Are they afraid of something? Or do they need a snack? Do they need a nap? And address the unmet need, that you will then make the behavior go away. And I really do think that happens a lot in business. And yet, and I wish I could say that I'm above this, there are times where I see someone's unmet need, but if you get I don't love that word triggered, but if you get hyped up around something that you have taken personally, even if you see that unmet need, sometimes to me, when I have experienced myself doing it, it scares me that when I feel this way, it almost feels like, if you see the things in the wild where they're and the one meerkat was limping, so the rest of them killed it. There is some weird kind of thing, I think, that when you get personally invested and that even when you see the need, then it sometimes, and I don't know why, but sometimes I think for some of us, sometimes it makes you almost want to grind the point home even more to prove your point. You're wait, if I can step back and take a breath and be the bigger person, even just for a second, or even pretend to be the bigger person, to say, seems like you're worried about this, what's going on there, or
well, so I think there are two things that I thought of when you were talking. One is, if we don't name the episode "Meet a Need" or "Kill a Meerkat," I'm going to be that. And the second thing that I was thinking is, it's funny that you were talking about children and how when children act out, they're asking for it. Many of them are asking for attention in the worst possible way because those are the tools they have available to them at the time. In my world, what struck me, and I hadn't thought about this, but in my world, which is law and very often in legal negotiations, employer to employee or partner or whatever the vendor to client, the only language is dollars. And so, right. So if I ask for more, or I ask for this, or I have limited tools with which to communicate a deeper need. And especially if you're going through a contract or I'm just asking for a raise, my need might be for you to recognize my value monetarily, certainly, but my value in other ways, or to be seen, or to
validation of your worth, or is it security, or is it flexibility? What is the need being met? And it all comes through this one channel of dollars or
and so
equity or whatever.
If the response is that, well, that's just a ridiculous offer. That's a ridiculous proposal you're making because I'm only seeing it through the one channel that you felt was available to you to express it, not exploring what other channels there might be, well, then I'm missing out on the real conversation. And that's really where, in my discussion with my client, I was really looking the disappointed, I want to nail them to the wall, whatever. I was looking at the channel that I had spent 2 years with him pursuing.
Right.
And not at the underlying conversation, which is sparked by his need rather than the expression of it in court.
Yeah, I love that so much because it really is. And I really appreciate the personal example you're giving, because it really is about staying focused on the right goal, right? Like he had a need. That's why this all started in the first place. And then the need becomes like a prescribed solution. And then if you keep your eyeballs on that, then it can lead you astray versus keeping to check back on the need. How is this feeling right now? I mean, I had a slightly same but different conversation about one of the startup clients I've worked with who had he has always had this like valuation, this like I would sell when the company gets to X. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's always good to have that in your frame of reference. And he's tired. And, he's gotten a couple offers lately that they aren't paltry. They aren't so small that I feel like, somebody needs to step in and tell him don't sell. They're not that small, but they're nowhere near where he really, really wanted. And so, his immediate reaction was to just blow them off. But I think there's some value in pausing to remember, why he picked that number and what it felt like that number would give him. And does this current number feel like it would give him that thing versus like that same thing, or maybe even something better or does he have to hold out for that other, like, what is it about that number that would give him that feeling? Like if it checked the boxes that number does, and he's just kind of ready to be done with it, then maybe that's okay. Because the other thing I know is if he's exhausted, the chances that he'll be able to keep it going long enough and do all the right things with the right kind of motivation and verve and mojo to get it to the place where he'll get that number are pretty slim to none. Like, I don't know if he's got that much gas in the tank. And so, but it's so hard to like keep checking in on the original want, like what's most important here. And
yeah, because it's so easy to be fixated on the means. The means is the journey. The means is getting that number that's in your head. The means is getting that judgment or getting whatever. But the end is fulfilling your need. Yeah. And I see so many people identify the means and once they identify that, become so fixated on it that they start mistaking the two. They start mistaking the vehicle that they identified as being the end unto itself. And that's really what I was looking at with my client. I was fixated on the vehicle of litigation, saying we got to win this,
right?
When really that was just the means to win him what he really needed.
Right. I mean, and as you were talking, it just suddenly clicked into view. To me, it's like going into the doctor's office because you've decided that you want to get a particular prescription from that doctor versus staying focused on, well, I just want this pain to go away, or I want this, like, and if there's another way to get there, it's not about just getting that prescription because that may not even give you what you want, or it may have side effects you don't want. I don't know. This late in an episode, we don't need more metaphors, so I'm just going to stop.
No, and I'd really like, as we wrap this up, I'd really like to see us return to the overall theme of this, which I think my story was going to, which is killing a meerkat. I think that's really what brings it home.
I guess that's my meerkat sound. I don't even know what that is.
Meerkat sound.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
You
can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best
Lovingly
of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us.
Which
is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.